What's up, Podsters? We are back, and have I got a January treat for you? We are back with Joann Krall, who is a professional organizer, and she's here to tell us all the things where she's going to spill the tea on everything you wanted to know about why you can't get organized and how you can cut it out and take back your life.
Are you ready to speak up, stand out, and get your seat at the table? If so, you're in the right place. Welcome to Unmute Yourself, the podcast where you'll get real-life anecdotes and actionable tools for you to step into your strengths, debunk imposter syndrome, truly know your worth, and show up like you own the room every time. I'm your host, Nancy Medoff, who did the thing and followed my passion for empowering women like you to unleash that inner spark and become who you know you are meant to be. I'm a diehard foodie with a raging Skittles habit who will not stop until women everywhere unmute themselves and truly thrive at work, at home, or wherever you may be. Let's do this.
So welcome, Joann.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So I've known Joann. How many years have I known you? 5, maybe?
Maybe 5.
Off and on. Yeah. So we met during the pandemic.
Yes, that's correct.
Was it a networking group? I can't remember.
Through Susan Finn. Yeah.
Susan Finn. Susan, if you're listening, I hope you're listening. Let me tell you something. If you are starting out in a business and you need to learn all there is to learn about your email community and marketing and community in general, Susan is your person. I am actually going to link to her webpage in the show notes. How do you like that, Joann?
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Do you still talk to her, by the way?
I haven't talked to Susan in a while. I met Susan almost at the beginning of my business at the networking group that she started in person so many years, like almost
wow.
15 years ago, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's a long time. Okay. So, Joann, I reached out to you maybe like in November or October or something? I don't remember.
Yeah.
And because I was thinking ahead for once, Podsters, and I was like, okay, it's going to be January. Everybody's going to have the new year, new me energy. I want to bring in a professional organizer. Here we have Joann. So, Joann, tell us a little bit more about what you do and why you think a professional organizer is even a thing. Like, what do you think happens? Why do people come to you?
Oh, great question. So I work virtually with mostly women business owners, helping them get organized in their homes, their businesses, and their lives. I tackle it all for them. My specialty is paper and digital organization, information, really, organization, but I help with all of it. I started back in 2006. It's kind of come full circle. I started working out with moms early on, and I think that moms typically, some moms come in organized and then, their kids arrive and chaos ensues. Some come in disorganized, their kids arrive and even more chaos ensues. So, and then I started working with people over the years, a lot of businesses. And so at the time, the reason why I started my business is because I was the person that was super organized. I'm a former accountant. My house was pristine all of the time. I didn't have any clutter. And then I had kids, but more happened after I had kids. I lost my parents within 2 weeks of each other. And, luckily my parents were organized, but it was still just, there's so much going on. And at the time I was doing direct sales for Longaberger. And then after they passed, I started doing creative memories because I wanted to preserve memories. And so I was running 2 businesses, had kids, and dealing with estates and all of this. So really, I was organized and then situationally became very disorganized. And so I was trying all the stuff, I don't know if you remember The Fly Lady and way back. I read all the books, Julie Morgenstern, all the processes. And I quickly realized that one way wasn't going to work for me. And the way that used to work for me before I had kids wasn't going to work for me. So I pulled pieces, what resonated for me from each thing, and I kind of built my own way of doing it. And then I was at a conference and I heard the quote, "Every mess is a lock on the gate of abundance." It was Raymond Aron. And I went, it just was that Oprah aha moment. And I went, I need to help people do this.
Amazing.
And that was when it was born. I was like, there it is. I'm I'm going to do this. So I set out to do a few clients for free to see if I could do it. My very first client was a hoarder, and I didn't know what a hoarder was at the time. Not like the extreme hoarders you see on
not on like Bravo or wherever.
No, I mean a lot of stuff, but not squalor, we'll say. There's levels to hoarding.
Yep.
She was probably a level 3. Somebody with a lot of clutter is level 1, and then it goes up. And interestingly enough, she reached out to me like 10 years later. And I was like, wow, it was fun to go back.
Yeah.
I realized that I had a knack for helping people figure out what works for them. Because I knew that, all the books that they've read, all the things that they've tried, they're still disorganized. And it was like, why? And I knew why, because having gone through that myself, and a lot of times it was they were born, I don't want to say born disorganized. They never just had that natural ability to organize. And usually what happens is when somebody is very disorganized as a child, a parent will be like, well, just do this and just do this. I mean, I look at the schools now. When my kids were in school, it was the binder system, those heavy binders with papers that they had to hole punch and put in. And I went, first of all, this is horrible on their backs. And second of all, my girls' binders were a mess because nobody gave them a hole punch.
Right.
Throw it in because they're going.
Right.
And so, I gave them a different system, and their teachers were like, you can't do that. I'm like, you want them to be organized. You need to let them find something that works for them. So that was a whole lot of rambling to just tell you that I'm like super passionate about cookie cutter solutions don't work. If you're disorganized, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you.
Oh, this is great.
You may have, if people have said to you, just get rid of that or just do it this way, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that it didn't work for you.
Okay. Sorry. Go. I interrupted.
No, that's.
Let me tell you why, Podsters. I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to show you. Okay, look at all the little stars and arrows. That's everything you just said that I want to drill back down on because you just dropped like 5 nuggets.
Okay.
Wow. So the first thing you said, well, one of the things you said, talk to me about, this was a really interesting term, situationally disorganized. Yeah. I love that term. Mm-hmm. I love it. It's the first time I've heard it. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So that can come from many things. For me, I had kind of triple whammy. I had two children who, when they're babies, it's easy because they're not walking around moving clutter around, or you're not gathering as much clutter. Right. That progresses. I lost my parents. Death of a loved one is that's probably one of the top things for people. And then, starting businesses. If you're somebody who was in the corporate world and, you had your structure, you go to your office, you leave your stuff, you go home, and then, you leave the corporate area, you work from home, that creates a whole level of, you got to separate the home, the life.
Yeah.
Learning to organize a new business. I mean, that's not a natural thing for everybody. It was easy for me on some level because I was, an accountant. So what I was doing in the corporate world required that structure, but I didn't have that structure at home. So, so that illness is a big one for people. When people are, always, when somebody's completely healthy and everything is organized and then they can't do it anymore. And that could be physical or mental illness because, if somebody starts to develop depression, it could be postpartum depression. It could just be, just from anything, menopause, hormones, that can it just changes everything for you. What you were able to once, clearly see, your brain just doesn't work the same. Yeah. So those are probably the main things. A lot of times, like if you've ever watched an episode of Hoarders, some of these hoarders were extremely organized before in their former life. They were very rigid about it. Like everything had to have its place because, and often when people are so strict with their organization, like to the point where they're like, you can't put that there, it has to go here. Like they're just really focused. And then something happens to them. They lose a child, or it's usually that's a lot of those episodes you'll see they've lost a child. They can't maintain that level that they were. They go the complete opposite direction. And it goes to the other extreme. So when we're dealing with extremes, that's why my podcast is called Permission to be Messy for that reason. I always want to give people that permission to let go of that perfectionism, because when that situational clutter or, disorganization appears, you have to give yourself grace. You have to be able to just breathe.
I love this because so I'm going to talk about myself for a second. I would consider myself highly organized. I would have in the past said I'm a highly organized person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you said a couple of things. Old ways don't always work. So that was something that I learned, and I want to talk about that in a second. But I beat myself up. So like right now, I'm not as organized as I would like to be. I'm just not. Mm-hmm. It's situational, right?
Yeah.
Like I organized my spice drawer the other day and I thought I ran a marathon. I was so proud of myself.
Yeah.
So it's when I'm not that I beat myself up, and it's every day. I'm like, Nancy, why can't you get it together? Or, Nancy, the pile's there, it's been there, and it's the shame. And who wants that? So the permission to be messy, like, okay, everybody take a breath. It's not plasma, right? For most of us.
Right.
It's situational. And I just think that the grace and the permission to, okay, let go of the perfection thing. We're not, Uber, whatever. I think that's incredible. And that's incredibly freeing, because when you can do that, then you're like, all right, the world's not going to end. Now I can focus on what works for me. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be, it's hard. It's hard to let it go. I mean, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I am lucky that I never got to the level where I felt shame. And a lot of my clients do. And it's the first thing I'm like, just do not. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. Humans, we're fluid. Everything changes. And once you realize, just let it go, and figure out what works best. As long as you're getting your bills paid, if you're working with your clients, you look, I mean, I think other people give you grace more than you give yourself,
100%.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. This is my dream come true talking to you, because this is all the stuff I'd love to talk about. Yeah. So you mentioned something about growing up. So do you think the way you're raised impacts your ability to get and stay organized as an adult?
It depends on the person. It's very interesting because, like I said, my parents were very organized, yet I was the one organizing in the house all the time. Like I was the one straightening up the closets. This is a whole other wormhole we could go down. I'm an adoptee. And so I think that my need from a very young age to keep things in order comes from that somewhere deep down. And although I did end up meeting my birth mother later in life, and she was one of those extremely organized people, but I also think that could be the opposite end, right? So like on both ends, she had that need to organize and I had that need to organize. And so I'm not sure, like if I had grown up with disorganized parents, like how my life would look different.
Yeah.
I do, because I think I wrote a blog years ago, and I'd love to go back and try and find it. But like nature versus nurture.
Right.
I can look at my own daughters who are both extremely organized, but they organize so differently, and I didn't teach them the way to organize.
Right.
I helped them figure out what would work best for them. But as children, they were collectors. They like to. They're starting to kind of go back to that a little bit. Not extreme collecting, but children like to collect things. Yep. And a lot of people will be like, "Oh, my kids are hoarders," and I'm like, "They're not hoarders. They're discovering what they like."
Right.
Don't ever call them a hoarder, and don't ever say to them, "Why are you collecting all this?" You know?
Yeah.
Foster it, because eventually they'll let it go. Yeah. Now there is this situation where, they may grow up to be hoarders, but. Right. Then you got to get them help. Right. You can't just say to them, "You're a hoarder." You have to get them.
So you said something when we chatted for quite a while before I hit the record button, which was fantastic. And this is fascinating. This to me is it. You said, don't start with systems.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was a light bulb, because I'm always like, okay, I'm going to go on Amazon. I'm going to get the file system and I'm going to get it and I'm going to put everything in there. And then everything's going to be so organized like forever. And that does not work. So tell us about that. Tell us a little, why doesn't that work?
I think it's, like with physical stuff. I mean, who doesn't love a trip to the Container Store or Target or, or Amazon? All like we love looking at organized spaces and we think, oh, we can do that. But we have to take into account our own space. First of all, we need to know what we have to organize. We have to take into our habits. Quick example that comes to mind is if I have something on my desk, like a vertical file, because it's all organized, I never look at it. So for me, I needed, like, I call myself a piler. I do have a quiz that, I made up the term piler.
Oh, I like that.
I'm very visual. I need to have everything out. So instead of having piles on my desk, I use these little pocket binders. They have like 10 pockets in them. And I have one for each kind of area. I have one for my business, one for my husband's business, one for personal, one for one of my daughters when they were little. And that, just having a book that I can open, grab a book and open it, worked for me. It took me a while to figure out what would be the best system, but I could have something on my wall. I'd never even turn over and look at it. I'd never open the files. So it's like it's like that's a working file, but it's not because I'm not looking at it. I've gone into people's homes where they've had, this beautifully organized filing cabinet. And in the front of it is a folder that says to do. And I'm like, are you going to open the drawer and do it? No, you need it right in front of your face. Some people need it tucked away. Some people need their surfaces clear. And we have to figure out how to make that work, that they're actually going to do it. So, so that's one example of starting with the systems. If we go to the other extreme of digital, like a project management system, people this time of year, what's your favorite planner? What's your favorite project management system? What do you use? And I'm like, well, I use ClickUp, but I'm not going to tell you to use ClickUp because you may go in there and go, everybody's like, no, Notion is the one you have to use. It's so easy. Even if you have ADHD and you're not techie. And I went into Notion and I was like, I don't even know what to do. It didn't like it. It didn't feel right for me. So sometimes it's just a feeling. So if I had taken all of my stuff and said, I'm going to go into Notion and I'm going to do it all, and then it failed, now you've made an even bigger mess. So starting with that system is not the place to start. Now, that said, we have to start somewhere. So like if you were to start with a project management system, I always say, do your research, get your recommendations, go on to those free trials, get a feel for them, maybe test one or two with a small project and see how it feels and how it works for you. Then you can make your decision. As far as doing buying all the organizing things for your home, say your spices. Okay, I'm going to get a spice rack for this cabinet. Well, is that really going to work for you? Just do something makeshift, or most of us have stuff in our homes that we can repurpose, because when I was working with people in person, even when I work with people virtually, they'd be like, I have all that. I have this bookcase. I have this magazine holder that I thought would be on my desk to use. And I'm like, well, you can use that for this. You know what I mean? Like, think about ways you could repurpose things.
I love it.
I always say, never spend money on anything until you know exactly what you have. So you really have to start with, there are a few steps before, but even if you don't do those steps, start with getting rid of as much as you possibly can. Because once you get rid of as much as you possibly can, you're going to have a clearer view. You may not even need to create systems. You may see that, say if we're looking at your kitchen and you've purged your kitchen, the biggest thing, people will laugh at me. I'm like, leave that drawer empty. Don't put anything in that drawer. You don't have to. You don't have to put anything in that cabinet. Because, I would go into these giant kitchens that would be packed with stuff. And I'm like, and people would go, I can't leave that empty. I can't. I'm like, okay, put one thing in there. Put a bowl on that shelf. Because the more space we have,
or
we fill up, and that works. That works for our homes. That works for storage. That works for digital storage, because it's digital storage. Oh, we'll just pay more. And I always say, my husband works in the digital storage industry, and I'm over here going, yeah, get rid of it. And he's like,
you're killing me. Yeah. So 5,000 nuggets again. So I have all this stuff written down. So you naturally got to where I wanted to go to, which is great. What you said, and I want to repeat it, is never spend money on anything until you know exactly what you have. And this was, remember I told you beforehand, I was listening to a podcast and like the light bulb went off.
Yeah.
If you don't need more organization necessarily, you need to declutter first. And that was like, whoa, because if you don't declutter, you'll just go out and buy a bigger bin, and then you'll go buy a bigger bin.
Right.
And then you'll buy a bigger bin, and then
Right.
you're still disorganized. It's all away. That to me is like, that was a game changer. That was
like,
absolutely.
People say you can't organize clutter. I'm like, you can organize clutter. It doesn't mean that it's effective, and you know, it's taking up space. And when you organize all that clutter, and then you have an event in your life, now you're left with all this stuff. So it's like, give yourself that future gift of, I'm going to make sure I don't have all this stuff, so that if, God forbid, something happens, you know, somebody passes away and I take on all their stuff, I can easily process their stuff without all my stuff being around. Yeah.
So I'm going to throw you a curveball here, a good curveball. So many, many years ago, before I met you, I hired somebody to help me organize my storage room. I have a big storage room, and I knew like it was disorganized for years. And I just knew I needed some help, and it was mostly accountability, and also like, okay, well, what systems might work, but it was mostly accountability. Yeah. So she came in, she said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take everything out. You take everything out of the space. So let's say it's your closet, because I know a lot of you podsters, you want to organize your closets, which to me is like the greatest feeling of accomplishment in the world.
And you go back and look at it over and over. You're like, look at my closet.
So you take everything out, right? Is that what you would recommend? Like, no. Okay, go. Ready, go.
I'm shaking my head no. Yeah. If you are with an organizer, but even if you're with an organizer, because there are times when, you know, I've had people go, I have to stop today. Or I have to do, you know, I just can't do anymore. I never want to leave people with an empty closet with crap all over their room. It'd be, and this kind of goes back to, you know, when the KonMari method was like a huge, I mean, people still talk about it, but it was really big. She'd be like, go get all your clothes and throw them on your bed. And I'm like, oh my God, that would give most of my clients anxiety beyond, because it also evokes a lot of shame when people see all of their stuff at once. So it works for some people. I'm not saying it doesn't work for people, but it does not work for everybody. No, the way I approach a closet, and especially if you're doing it yourself, is to deal with it in chunks. So start with the floor, declutter the floor.
Okay. Yeah.
Start with the top shelf, declutter the top shelf. For your clothes, you could chip away and pull out. I like to tell people to just flip their hangers around. I mean, this isn't my idea. I heard this from somebody else. Flip your hangers around, and as you wear the thing and wash it and put it back, put it in correctly. Some people, that's too much because they just have too much stuff in there. So then I will say, okay, just pull out a few items every day, things that you know you haven't worn, and you know, pull those out and assess them from there. I haven't worn it because it's a fancy dress, and I want to have it for that time when I need it. Okay, fine. Put that back in, put it to the side. Or, you know, I haven't worn this because it doesn't fit me, but I want it to fit me. Okay, put that in a box or put it way over to the side. Not saying, I don't tell people to get rid of it, because that's a whole nother conversation, and that isn't something that you want to be dealing with in that moment. You want to reduce as much as you can, as quickly, without making hard decisions. So pick the easy decisions.
So I want to pause there for 1 second, because that's huge. So let's say it's a pair of jeans that are a size 2, right? That someday I'm going to be a size 2. So what you're saying is, instead of having that internal conversation with yourself and talking about all the reasons why you haven't been a size 2, or you might be a size 2, or you might not, or I'm not going to wear that, and here's why, you're like, okay, put this in a maybe someday spot.
Yeah.
Because if we start going down that rabbit hole, we're going to be here for an hour, and it's going to be a whole bigger thing. Okay. Love it. Great. Okay. Please continue.
Yeah.
Or was there more?
Yeah. And then, you know, it's just like slowly reducing what's in that closet. If you're somebody that likes to tackle things all at once, do it in those sections. You know what I mean? And this all depends on how big your closet is. I mean, I just have a wardrobe for my entire wardrobe. I could do it in 5 minutes.
Oh my God. Really?
It was because it's so small. Like I'm like Steve Jobs in the capsule wardrobe. It's so funny. I say I either have really fancy stuff or athletic wear. I mean, I have a few pieces that are in between, and I am slowly, but I'm really mindful about what I'm getting because I want to make sure it's something like I had my 40th reunion last year, and I went to this boutique. And I spent money on this beautiful jacket and shirt. And it's like, I could wear this every day, but it looks nice enough like to where I'm going. You can dress it up or dress it down. So I'm really thoughtful about that. Yep. I don't do that. There is this whole, what is it? The 333 wardrobe thing.
Yes.
I'm not like that. Right. I have everything in one wardrobe with, shelves hanging. And then I do have a couple items in a cedar chest, but I wear winter clothes pretty much. I have clothes that you can wear all year long, but that's just me. And I don't think everybody needs to be that way. Some people, their clothes make them so happy and they love it all. And I'm like, then keep it all. You know what I mean? If it
that's
fits
me.
And you wear it, then keep it. Like there's no problem with that by any means.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, if somebody really wants to tackle it all at once, it's like, okay, we'll tackle it. And, sometimes our closets are divided by sections. So tackle one of those sections.
Yeah.
And
that's great.
And don't worry about organizing it. So if you grab a section and it's a whole, it's everything from the fancy dress to, a pair of jeans, just put them back. Don't organize as you go. Just say, I've decluttered this section. I'm keeping all this. Move on to the next section.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. Then once you've gotten rid of as much as you possibly can, then you can say, all right, how do I want to organize this? I think it's really important to have matching hangers. Doesn't matter if they're wood or plastic. It's really important to have your hangers match because visually it helps so much. And some things have to be hung on, maybe a velvet hanger and maybe other things. So that's okay. But as long as you're not like a ton, the Joan Crawford and the wire hangers, I have a great video from Snapchat that I did way back in like 2006, me pretending to be her.
That's funny.
I'm gonna find that. But,
So wait, I'm going to pause for a second. So for those of you that are listening that don't know what Joann's talking about, because we do have some people that might not know, Mommy Dearest was a movie.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to see if I can find the link on YouTube. And she goes berserk.
Yes.
When her daughter, I think.
Yes. Her
little girl had wire hangers in the closet. Mm-hmm. Anyways, it was this epic moment. So I'm going to link to that actually. Because that was like, what? Okay. Keep going. Yep.
Yeah. So, and that approach that we just talked about with your closet, that's how I approach everything from paper to your digital files, to your kitchen, to whatever it is. Work in micro sections, reducing, and going around.
I want to get to digital and paper next.
Yeah. Okay.
What I like about the closet chunks is if I don't have all day, I have 10 minutes. Set a timer for 10 minutes, Nancy, and declutter your jeans. Or set a timer for 10 minutes and declutter your belts or whatever. I really like that because I'm the type of person who will let it go weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks until I pitch a fit. And then I spend all day and I'm bitter and I'm angry and, whatever. So I really like this. I really like that because you can do that in 5 minutes a day. Yep.
And I have another point along with that. So there's that aspect, but then there's also I was this person. And this is probably why I love doing organizing. I was letting things build up and build up and build up because I love tackling it and then looking at it. Like I said before, you look, oh, wow, I feel such an accomplishment. I had to let that go for myself. Yeah. That's where my very first product was born out of, chipping away, and not just with decluttering and, getting rid of stuff, but with cleaning. Because my house, I wouldn't do little things all the time. I mean, obviously the dishes and things like that, but I wasn't doing all the other stuff. I do a massive clean. And then I'd be exhausted. So I had to retrain myself to chip away at cleaning and decluttering and doing all of that because I loved the process but I was living in a state of and then it would be beautiful. And then it would go, So.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, because when we first started talking, you said people come to me because they either don't have the time or they don't have the knowledge.
Yeah.
So the letting it build and build and build to me, like you're getting some kind of gratification out of that. Like there's a reason why every 6 months I go ballistic on my closets. There's a reason. I'm getting something out of it. I don't,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that it's the psychology, which is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about paper and digital because this fascinates me. So I will be sitting in an airport because I remember you did it was either a blog post or it was a Facebook, something about organizing your digital photos. And I remember thinking to myself, I sit in an airport for an hour and I could be bored out of my mind. And I could spend that hour digitally organizing my photos, yet I don't. So tell me about let's start with photos and then I want to talk about digital and paper. So
Okay.
how do you recommend people digitally organize their photos without buying an app? Because that's absurd to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think way back when I was doing Creative Memories, they had a software and I had my photos digital photos were brand new. So there wasn't as many and there was no phone. So it was only camera. And I had everything tagged by it's like both my daughters are in it. So they would have that tag and then we have like a birthday tag. And then my computer crashed. I didn't lose my photos, but I lost all of the organization. And then that software was no longer available anymore. So it was like, and so things have evolved now. I mean, when we take a photo with our iPhones or even a Google phone, it does a little bit of tagging and all the metadata is there and everything's there. So my biggest thing is to reduce your photos as much as you possibly can. So if we're talking personal photos,
yeah.
I can tell you when my parents passed away, obviously they had no digital photos, and gratefully, they didn't have thousands of personal photos. That was such a gift because if I had taken all of their photos and had to deal with them and store them, and it would be hard. But one thing I do know is there's a lot of photos. I don't know who anybody is in the photo.
Yeah. Right.
So what's the point, right? I think at the very least, we want to be documenting, if you're on physical photos, documenting that. But even in your digital photos, renaming the photos that are important. We're not going to go through and rename every photo because we take great.
You could do that. I didn't know you could do that.
Once they're onto your, this is the thing. If you're using a filing system on your computer, you can do that. I'm not sure. I haven't looked.
I'm going to look right now.
Yeah, I was going to look in the thing, but at the very least, reducing. I mean, you could take some of your photos and put them into a filing system on your computer, put them into an actual file out of the Photos app, say on your Mac.
Yep.
And rename a few just to preserve some of the memories. But when we had our cameras back in the day and we sent them to the photo lab, we would get them back and they would be heads cut off and.
And you'd throw them up.
People don't delete those digital photos.
Yeah, that's
just
a really
take
good
up
point.
so much space. Or if we're taking pictures at a birthday party, we take like 75 pictures of the same group of people or the same. So I would say take a birthday party and make sure that you've got everybody accounted for. If there's any pictures that aren't great, just get rid of them. You don't need 50 pictures. Now, if you have, say, a grandfather in the photo and it's blurry, but that's the only picture you have of keep the blurry photo. You know what I mean? Like making those decisions. Where I see people getting very tripped up with business owners, they create stuff for social media and they save every single bit of it. And I'm like, are you ever going to repurpose that? Nope. If you created it in Canva, get rid of it on your computer. If you created it, if it's stock photos, you probably want to keep the file if you want to have the credit for it and things like that. But we just Or we keep like multiple versions. Like, you create something, you create a photo for Instagram or a graphic, and then you're like, well, I'm going to repurpose it on LinkedIn and Facebook and all these places. And then we keep every version. We don't need it. We're never going to post it again. You may want to keep one for reference. So if you want to do it again, but even then you can just go back into your social media and look and see what you did. And, wherever you created it, it should be saved. But we save a lot, and so that can be a whole nother challenge. Screenshots. I don't know about you, but I'm really good about going through my phone and, I'll screenshot something to remember it. But if you never go back and look at it, it's just taking up space.
Yeah. I've gotten better at that. So this is so interesting because as you're talking, I'm thinking you're either a person who does that. This is what I'm thinking. You are either a person who, when they take 5 photos at a family event, they delete 4 and keep the best one. That's my husband. He does that.
Yeah.
As we're sitting there, he will do it.
Yeah.
Or you don't. And I would never do it. I would have the thousands of pictures.
Yeah.
It's just not in my DNA. So I think some of that may be about discipline. If you're not that type of person, like maybe you have Photo Friday, and the first 30 minutes of every Friday, you go through your photos from that week.
Yeah.
And you organize them. I don't know. Yeah. I like Photo Friday. I'm going to start that actually for
Photo Friday. Yeah. I mean, it's a good process too, because, we took the photo for a reason. We didn't just take it to take it. You should enjoy your photos. If they're personal photos, you should be enjoying every single one of them. Otherwise, what's the point of having them? So we enjoy them while we're here, and then we can think ahead to, any family members that may be seeing them when we're long gone. Will they know who's in this photo? And they may not know who's in that photo from that photo, but you may have a section of important photos, like having a photo of somebody from each decade. It doesn't even have to be a year, decades, or like this was a really super important occasion. I'm going to preserve this photo, and I'm going to make sure that people know who's in every single one of them. And that could be through using apps or things like that, or moving it into your file system and putting some notes on it, or renaming it, or
another huge tidbit. I'm trying to think of a catchy name to call all these golden nuggets, like Joann's juicy nuggets. What I just heard you say was enjoy all of them, or what's the point of having them, right? And as you were talking about that, I know you're talking about photos. I was thinking about clothes. Or, right, like if I have to dig through 500 things to get to the pants that I bought that I forgot about, same thing with like your kids' artwork. And I've seen this, right? Like pick a few things, frame them up or put them somewhere nice, and dare I say, get rid of the rest.
Well, what I did with my kids are super artistic. Like when they were little, I would, at the end of the school year, I would lay out all of the artwork that they did, and I'd snap one photo. So I'd have one photo, and then I would name the file, Jessie 1990. Well, no, she wasn't even born in 19. She was in the 2000s, but Jessie 2002 or age 2 or whatever you know what I mean? So that she could look back someday and go, because I would keep some pieces, and then we did frame some. But it's interesting, they're adults now. And when they went through their memory boxes, they were like, why'd you keep this? Why'd you keep this? And I'm like, I don't know. I thought you might want it someday,
That's great.
So thankfully, there was only a few things that they had to wonder. Like it wasn't, you never want to hand your kids boxes and boxes of stuff that they now have to go through.
I love that idea. I love that idea. And I'm thinking about how I could apply that to my business. So, all right, let's get into digital and paper for your business.
Okay.
I was just going to say, just tell us everything. So what I found is, and we were talking about this earlier, I have a few go-to processes that have worked my whole life, and then I just adapt them for my business. Yeah. So where do you find business owners struggling the most with organizing digital and paper files?
First of all, overwhelm. We are business owners by nature are information hoarders. We want all of the information. We want to learn. We want it all. And it's funny, I never heard that term information hoarding until I met, going back to the show Hoarders, I met Matt Paxton. We were talking and I said, I just came because I love the show. And like, I don't really work with hoarders. And he goes, you just told me that you work with paper and digital. He goes, and you live in the Northeast. You live in the range of all the Ivy League schools, within however many miles. He goes, information hoarding. And I'm like, you're so right. I actually have a file that I'm going to record myself doing it. I keep saying this, but I haven't done it yet. I organize my stuff in a certain way, and one of them is to read.
Oh,
I have 800 files in there.
Yeah.
That is all stuff I have downloaded, checklists,
Yep.
cheat sheets, boom, 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 boom. And I never wanted to be the business owner adding to that clutter. And so that's why I shifted from a PDF download to a private podcast episode for people to listen to, because listen to it, be done, and then, it's not on your phone. It's not in your files. But yeah. And so not saying anything wrong with those checklists, and sometimes it's very important and we need it, but we have to be mindful when somebody's offering something for free. The big thing now is huge bundles, and you can get all these things for free when you go to this thing. And I'm like, oh God, you're just going to get, because it's going to be now emails, and it's going to be all these downloads. And are you going to actually look at it? You have to get real with yourself. How big is your to read file? Is it? And it may not even be in a to read file. Mine's all in one spot, so I know what it is. But are they cluttering up your desktop? Are they cluttering up your downloads? Are you filing them to read, like marketing information? Are you ever going to look at it? So you have to be really, really thoughtful about that. So really, with business owners, they have to learn to reduce what's coming in as far as information. Pick and choose, and be sure to implement. And if you're not implementing, don't grab the next thing. Or, okay, I didn't implement that, but I really need this next thing. So I'm going to download it, but I'm going to read it right away, and I'm going to put it into action. And if it, or if it's something I look at and I don't really need it, just delete it,
Not the huge nugget. So if it's not, what I heard was, if it's not working, let it go. Like, this is what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I internalize what you said.
Yeah.
So, and don't go get something else that's the same thing that you think that's going to work. So I love how you said that, because it's like, give yourself a break. You tried it. It didn't work. It doesn't work for you. It doesn't matter how much money you spent on it.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not working. So you can carry it with you from place to place to place. Same thing with your clothes, right? You bought white spandex jeans or whatever, and they don't work. So are you going to keep carrying them around, or are you going to let them go? I think that's particularly with digital files. The other thing I thought of as you were talking was, so I paid a lot of money for how to make a digital course, a lot of money. And it came with
hired me. I could help you do that.
Well, that's another thing I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about everything you do. So I paid a lot of money for this digital course, and you're right. So, but I have all these files, and they come with me. I've had them for 5 years. I finally put them on a drive. I took them off of my computer. I put them on a drive. I labeled them, and I'm like, okay, they're there if you need them. They're not in your day to day, so you don't look at it every day, and it's not clogging up your storage. I guarantee you, I'm never going to look at it. So is it in your mind?
Do you think about it? Like, are you thinking,
no,
this is where you would go. You're like, am I ever going to create a digital course? No. Right. Or do I just not need that program because I know what to do? You know what I mean? It's because sometimes we can tuck things away, but even though they're out of sight, technically out of mind, they are there, back there, like kind of laughing at you from haunting you from a distance.
For me, it's out of sight, out of mind.
Good. Perfect.
Yeah. But it's the same thing as, again, back to the closet. So you're never going to wear it. You thought that you would like it. You don't.
Yeah.
So get rid of the shame. Get real. Get real. Okay. Like, you are, like, I am not a white spandex jean person, but I mean, whatever. I'm just, oh, I love it. If it's not working, let it go, is what I heard. Okay. So what else you got for small business owners? So we talked about the digital piece. So tell me what, go ahead.
So reducing, understanding your habits. So my 7-step process in a nutshell is we kind of gather. So if it's physical, we gather the paper. If it's digital, we take an overall inventory. We don't take a deep inventory. We just get an idea of what we've got. How many external drives do we have? How many external cloud services are we using? How many files are on our desktop? That type of thing. Then we go into reducing the inflow. So I'm really thinking about what's coming in, whether it's email or file downloads, any information coming at us. Then we assign.
Can I pause you for a second?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So reduce inflow. That you're like, okay, then you reduce inflow. Great. Okay. Well, all right. So we reduce inflow. How do you do that?
It's different. It's lots of different ways. I mean, if you're subscribing to every single newsletter or you're downloading all these things and now you're getting all these emails, it's unsubscribing. Well, no, it's not. That's the purge part, but it's stopping yourself before you do
Do
it
it in
and
the first
really
place.
thinking.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's trying to minimize what you're bringing in,
Okay.
and for digital, most of it is us intentionally doing it. I mean, sometimes there's spam, but
No, 100. So my Gmail is at the point where it's become all of it is junk. And I'm like, you know what? That's your fault. So anyway, okay.
yeah.
So I interrupted you. Please continue. So
No, that's okay.
reduce the intake, which sounds easy.
So, and then we move into making sure that anything that new is coming in, we're assigning it a temporary spot before we go and try and create our systems. So for me, like I said, I have that to read file, but I also have a to do, a to pay. I have the to read, and then I have to file because I don't like to file. I know I'm an organizer, but I don't like to file things. I like to batch file. So I have an actual folder that says to file.
Me too.
So it's assigning a temporary spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then we move into purging. So now we were like, okay, we're reducing what's coming in. Anything that is coming in, we're making sure we're putting it in a spot that it's safe while we do all our decluttering. And then that's when we don't really form systems, but we start to group things. And for me, it's that same category of to do, to pay, to read, to file. Somebody else might be, I'm just going to group things. This is personal. This is business. It's different for everybody. And then as we've done that, then we move into doing a little bit more purging at that point. Because as we're grouping things, because when I say to purge things, I want people to be making quick decisions, not overthinking. That first pass should just move. You get stuck on something, keep it. Just keep moving. And then once we've gotten rid of as much as we possibly can, we've set up a rough grouping of what we have. That's when we sit and we evaluate and we think, okay, what was I hoarding? What was I bringing in? What wasn't I doing? How was it? What was happening when I was bringing it in? Was I downloading things and leaving them on my desktop? Were they all sitting in my downloads folder? Where were things going? What was I doing with them? Did I try any filing systems in the past? Somebody told me to use Notion or Evernote. Did I try that? Did it work? Did it not work? We got to think about why it didn't work. Not everybody can come to those conclusions on their own. And that's when someone like myself can help.
Yep.
And then at that point, that's when we can say, okay, now I'm ready to pick a system. Now, it's not always an exact science. You might pick a system and be like, again, it didn't work for me. But that's when we do more evaluation. Okay, why didn't it work for us? But if we do all that pre-work before we get to systems, we're going to have much more information on, we're going to say, oh, yeah, like I used to use Trello for my personal, and I used Asana for business because it just felt, personal is more than Asana. Never opened either one of them. Never did. They were beautiful. I had all the stuff in them, but I never did anything with them. And I let go of it all. I went back to my paper and, calendar assistants, which I still do, but I use ClickUp now. When I first got ClickUp, I looked at it and was like, I just don't even know where to start. I gave it a year. I met somebody who teaches it. So I started watching some things and it clicked. I always say ClickUp clicked for me.
Well, that's
doesn't
funny.
click for everybody. And I open it every day. And I use it for personally and business. Everything's all in one place.
Yep.
So it's just interesting. Yeah. I like having my calendars everything is intermingled for me because you know what? My life is my life. And, I have to work my life around my business and my business around my life.
That's interesting.
So it's all, it's not, I have my personal workspace and then I have my business workspace and each one is broken down and it's all the calendars talk to each other and, everything, it's like you book an appointment with me today. All of my calendars will know that. And no matter where I'm at, I can see it, because ClickUp has their own calendar. I use Google Calendar. I use Acuity scheduling. And then, I have an old calendar that has like archives in it. So.
Okay. this is huge. So podsters, I want to make sure that you heard what I heard, which is after the purge, after you purge and find a temporary place, and purging should be quick decisions, right? It's after that. This is what I say to myself. Okay, now I can psychoanalyze myself and understand why this didn't work for me and this didn't work for me and this didn't work for me. And then I'm ready to pick a system. And I would suggest most people do it the exact opposite. They pick the system, they try to make it work. It doesn't, they get frustrated, they move on.
And that, I mean, that works for some people. You know what I mean? It's like, if you pick the right system and it works, that's great. And there are, the marketing is great out there. There are people who sell their system, whether it's a physical system or a digital system. There are people who sell, and they sell really well. Look at Marie Kondo. She had great publicists. She took the world by storm. The only unique thing to her was, the spark joy and love your socks and all that. I'm like, my husband has been folding the way Marie Kondo folds since before she was even born. He folds his socks. I roll my socks and throw them in. Like he's almost like militant, about it. But people like, the marketing is, this is the system that will finally work for you. And you hear that and you're like, awesome. Yeah. I mean, I look back to Fly Lady. They were like, this is the system that'll work for you. And there were so many people that were like, I was completely overwhelmed, because back then it was just email. There was no course. It was like you got an email every day, and people were so overwhelmed by it, myself included. There are a few things that I picked up from her that, I did, but that was it. It wasn't like her entire system was going to fix my life. I was completely overwhelmed by it. So, it makes sense. I mean, people say to me all the time, oh, I want you to help me, or they're like, I just bought this course on, Google organization. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, do you know if that's going to work for you? Because if it's going to work for you, great. Because they'll be like, well, can you help me with this? And I'm like, I will help you get to the point. And I said, to be honest with you, like, say for ClickUp, I'm not a ClickUp expert. I couldn't be an expert in every single program. So I'll say, if you want this to be like a high functioning machine and ClickUp is the one for you, here's the person that you need to talk to. It's like, and I'm fine with that. Like it's I'm not going to teach one way just to make money and to get people, because I know it's not going to work for everybody. So there are a lot of people that say, this is the time management system you've tried them all, this is the one. It's like, I always say, run. If somebody says this is the one, this will work for you, they're not truthful, unless you are the person that it'll work for. But
and I think about, like, I know what works for me. So stop trying to do all the other things, hone in on what works for you, and see if you can apply it in a situation. I'll
apply that to business. I just, the other day, I can't tell you how many times people, and sometimes it's friends, but they're like, well, you should be doing this. So, or you just need to do this. And just and should are not in my vocabulary. Sometimes I'll use the word just in a certain situation, but it's never you just need to. Mm-hmm. Nobody just needs to, and nobody should be doing anything. They should only be doing what's right for them.
I love it.
And so I've gotten so much business advice, and I say, you know what? You don't know my business. You don't know my ins and outs. Right. Thank you for the thing. It's the unsolicited advice.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for the feedback.
Exactly.
Okay. So tell us, how do you work with people? Like, who is the perfect fit for you? Because I want to make sure, podsters, that you understand you can work with Joann virtually. And you have a lot of different levels of offering. So I want to make sure people understand that. So tell us how can I work with you?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, because I just created a new page that I need to put a new video on, because I did it for the year-end promotions. But I have a page that's called Learn With Me. I like to say Learn With Me, because while I do teach people, we're learning together. We're learning what works for you. So that's everything from free to VIP. And so I do offer courses.
Yep.
My courses, you always have access to me. It's not take this course and how am I going to ask a question?
Pretty cool. Like live immediate not immediate.
Yeah, so if you needed help with paper and digital and that process that I just talked through, you can buy that course, and then you can ask me questions on that course. It's not like coaching, but it's like, oh, I just have a quick question about this.
That's great. By the way, that's extraordinarily powerful, because not a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never want to leave people just kind of
I
wondering.
agree.
So I
agree.
have courses, individual courses. I have a group program that people can join at any time. It's fluid. It's not like we're working on one thing. My coach actually said, it's like a buffet. Take what you want and leave the rest. So if you only need help with paper and digital, but you want to come to sessions and coaching calls and you want access to, because I do Voxer coaching with that as well, then join the 12 weeks. And don't worry that I'm giving you stuff on home organization, photo organization, email. You just need help with paper. It's okay. You're buying the same container. So that comes with a course. And then it comes with all of that, what I said.
Okay.
And then I do VIP and private coaching as well.
So tell me about the VIP day, because that to me, that's what I would do. I would say, okay, I'm going to spend a whole day. I'm going to invest in this. And what do you get? What do you do with people on the VIP day?
So a VIP day it's 6 hours of focused time working together virtually through Zoom with breaks, obviously. So it's a whole day, but obviously we're going to take breaks because it can be exhausting. And that can look different for everybody. Some people just want to talk through all of the stuff and then go off and do it. Some people want to work on the stuff as we go through. So somebody could be like, I don't have any clutter, but I need to know how to organize my digital files. So we'll get right into their computer and be like, okay, what have you done? Where is everything? We'll go through that 7-step process. And we can't declutter all of the stuff in the 6 hours, but we can get started so they get the feel, they understand where they're going with it, and then they'll work on their own. That also comes, we do a call before the day though, so that when the day comes, we are ready to get working. Like we're ready to start. We're not spending all that time trying to figure out how we want the day to work. And then I do some follow-up with that as well.
I think that's fantastic. What I like about that is the pre-call, because before we were talking, so I had hired an organizer to help me with my storage room. A pre-call would have been great because it would have really said, okay, what are your goals? It's so that you can come in and help them the way that's going to work best for them.
Absolutely.
Rather than you coming in and using your system.
Right.
You talk to me ahead of time and it's a system that'll work for me. That's amazing. So I heard you say co-organizing session. Are these things that people can just pop onto, or do you have to be part of the 12-week group?
You have to be a part of the 12-week program.
Okay. Yep.
I've tried to just offer them one off, but people don't really, I find that, that would be great for somebody who just needs accountability. It's almost like it's a co-working session, but I call it co-organizing because my people come in, they work on their stuff. I'm just sitting there doing my own work, but I'm there to answer their questions at the drop of the hat. They can interrupt me at any time and ask that question, because when we are organizing, say we're organizing a closet and we get to something and we're not sure what to do. If we don't have the answer in that moment, sometimes we just go, all right, I'm done for the day. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Screw it.
No progress.
Yep.
So that's what those are for. And I do multiple of those during the week. And it's fluid as far as when I do them, depending on who's a member at the time. I make sure that everybody has at least access to one a week. So it's like a private session, because it's a very small group. You're pretty much getting the one-on-one VIP, but
I love it. Oh, so that's a little hint there. Read between the lines there, Podsters.
Yeah.
So how can someone find you? I know your website is joannkrall.com, right? KRAL. Yes. We're going to link to that in the show notes.
Yep. And Joann. Yep.
Love it. And your podcast is weekly?
Well, I'm on a hiatus. I'm getting ready to get started back up on it, but there's a good number of episodes out there and it will be weekly again. For a whole year, I was just kind of testing things out and I'm like, I really want to start interviewing people. So I've been putting together a plan for that.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. And then the Learn With Me page is just joannkrall.com and Learn With Me with dashes in between. That has everything on it. I actually need to put a link to that. I'm glad we talked, because I'll link that on the homepage of my website.
So they can just go to joannkrall.com and eventually there'll be the Learn With Me.
Yes, I'll do that. I'll do that today. So there you go.
Great. See that? Accountability.
Yeah, exactly.
So the name of the podcast, if you want to binge Podsters, is Permission to Be Messy.
Mm-hmm.
Funny, because that really is the crux of The Secret. And at the same time, I would be like, permission to be messy. Like, well, no, I need a podcast about how to not be messy.
Exactly.
In your philosophy. Yeah. I just think that's great. That's great. Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. And on my
Anything
homepage,
else?
I do have that private podcast episode that talks about this whole thing we talked about with systems. So if you want to hear it, in
I
that
love it.
forum, yeah.
I have literally 8 pages of notes here, at least. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a snapshot and I'm going to file them. Anything else? Any last parting words, advice, anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about?
Oh my goodness, we covered a lot.
A lot.
I like to just reiterate, the cookie cutter solutions don't work, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with you if a system didn't work for you. And a lot of people, business owners aspire to have somebody helping them, but they're so disorganized that they feel like they can't even get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's important to take control of yourself before you unless you're bringing in somebody to help you organize. But at the same time, they have to have that gift of being able to do what works for you as well. Because if you hire someone to just take it all over and then they go away, whatever they set up needs to work for you as well.
Yes. Yes. Because then you're just back to, okay, now it's a mess again. My storage room.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little better, but yeah, anyway. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I loved this session.
I did too. It's fun.
Podsters, go find Joann. And we're in all the places. We're going to link to everything. We're going to link to the no wire hangers. That was something. And Joann, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a wrap, Podsters. And before we go, I ask you, what's one thing from today's episode that you will use this week to unmute yourself? DM me, email me, send a smoke signal, whatever you need to do. Let me know what you're going to do differently. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone you know and leave a 5-star review on Apple. This helps me spread our message of empowerment to more people worldwide. Let's do this.